It's late, and not just any kind of late, but the kind of night when time seems to pause. Did you know that nearly 40% of the Gospels are dedicated to the last 7 days of Jesus' life? That means out of all the miracles, sermons, and moments, nearly half the story leads to this one garden. And here's a question that might keep you up a little longer tonight. What if the most important battle of all time wasn't fought with swords, but with silent tears under ancient trees? What if salvation didn't begin at the cross, but right here under moonlight in a place so quiet you could hear your own breath? You walk slowly down a sloping hill, the smell of pressed olives lingering in the air. The grass is cool beneath your feet, damp with the kind of dew that gathers when the world is holding its breath. You see a small group break away, a man in the center draped in stillness. He doesn't rush. Every movement is deliberate. He turns to you, yes, you, and asks gently, "Stay here with me. Watch with me for just a little while." And somehow, though you don't fully understand why, you know you're standing on holy ground. Welcome to Gethsemane. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from tonight and what time is it for you? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Garden of Gethsemane is more than just a patch of trees on a Jerusalem hillside. Its name means oil press, and perhaps that's fitting because tonight someone will be pressed. Not by men, but by something deeper: grief, destiny, surrender. You sit beneath one of the ancient olive trees, their gnarled branches curling toward the moon like twisted hands in prayer. Some of these trees still stand today, thousands of years old. Botanists debate whether any of them are the very same ones, but when you see them, you can't help but feel they remember. You lean back, and the quiet wraps around you like a blanket. But there, a few feet away, he doesn't sit. He kneels. Jesus, the one they call Rabbi, Lord, Son of Man. Tonight his face is low to the ground, and though he came with friends, they don't hear his words. They're already drifting into sleep. He prays aloud, but softly, so softly, like someone whispering to a parent behind a closed door. And this, you realize, is what makes the moment different. You've heard him speak to storms before. He's rebuked demons, commanded death to turn back. But here there's no commanding, only pleading. If it be possible, let this cup pass from me. A cup. You wonder what he means. There's no cup in his hands. No wine here, no chalice of gold like the paintings show, just dirt, and the sound of wind brushing through the leaves. And maybe if you're really quiet, you think you can hear it too. His breathing. It's uneven now. The way someone breathes when grief isn't just emotional, it's physical. When sorrow sits on your chest like a stone. Doctors call it hematidrosis, a rare condition where intense stress causes the capillaries around your sweat glands to burst. And it causes what sweat that looks like blood, a fringe condition. Some say it's exaggerated. Historians still argue whether the gospel writer Luke, himself a physician, meant this literally or metaphorically. But tonight, as you sit beneath the olive tree, it doesn't matter, because the pressure in the air is real. You see him rise for a moment. He goes back to the others, Peter, James, John, but they're asleep. Even Peter, the one who swore he'd never leave. And Jesus, he doesn't yell. He doesn't scold. He just sighs. Could you not watch with me 1 hour? It's not anger. It's heartbreak. You've been there before, haven't you? When you needed someone the most and they didn't show up. Not because they didn't care, but because they were tired. Because they didn't understand. Because sometimes even love falls asleep. So he goes back. Again. And again. 3 times he prays, 3 times they sleep, and finally a shift. He stands, not with trembling anymore, but with resolve. You feel it in your chest like thunder before a storm. He turns to you. The face that once wept is now set like stone. His voice is firm and yet impossibly gentle. The hour has come. And just as he says it, you see torches. Not stars, not angels, but torches. Marching, closer, the sound of sandals scraping stone and murmurs in the night. The quiet garden is about to become a battlefield. But the strangest part, he doesn't run. You stay perfectly still, almost forgetting to breathe. The olive branches above you sway slightly, whispering their age-old secrets as figures move through the darkness. It's a strange procession, clumsy, over-prepared, nervous. Temple guards with spears and ropes lanterns swinging wildly in their hands. Behind them, a familiar face. One you didn't expect to see again, at least not here. Judas. He's walking ahead of the soldier's eyes darting. He knows this place. He's been here countless times with Jesus. This garden was a place of retreat, of peace, and tonight he's turned it into a trap. It's easy to hate Judas, to think of him as the villain cloaked in greed and betrayal, but you watch him closely now and something feels off. His hands shake, his steps falter. Historians still argue whether Judas fully understood what he was doing or whether he hoped Jesus might somehow escape again like always, a twisted loyalty, a desperate push for revolution. No one agrees, but you can see it now. Judas is a man unraveling. He walks right up to Jesus. They lock eyes, and for a moment the whole world seems to hold its breath. Then a kiss, soft, almost tender, and yet it crashes through the garden like thunder. Jesus doesn't pull away. He doesn't flinch. He just says, "Judas, do you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" That's when chaos erupts. The guards move forward. Voices rise. Peter wakes with a start, panicked, and suddenly a flash of metal. A sword. You hear it cut through air, through flesh. A cry. Blood. Malchus, the servant of the high priest, stumbles back, clutching his ear. It's gone. Peter's breathing hard, adrenaline surging, eyes wide with fury. He thought he was protecting his Lord. He thought violence could save the Messiah. But Jesus, he says one sentence, "Put your sword back in its place." There's no fury in his voice, just sorrow, and then the most forgotten miracle of the night. He reaches out and heals the man who came to arrest him. Touch, warmth, wholeness. No spotlight, no audience, just compassion in the middle of betrayal. Who does that? You try to make sense of it. Everything in you wants to fight to stop what's happening. But Jesus has made his choice. He lets them bind him roughly, unnecessarily. They tie his hands, though his spirit is free. They treat him like a criminal, though his only crime was love. You begin to understand now. The garden wasn't just where Jesus prayed. It was where he surrendered. The olive press. Gethsemane, a place where olives are crushed to release their oil. Tonight, the soul of Christ is being crushed so that something sacred might flow. Not oil, but mercy. Not bitterness, but blessing. They drag him down the hill. The torches fade into the night. You remain behind your heartbeat, slow your thoughts louder than ever. The scent of crushed leaves clings to the air. You touch the ground where he knelt. Still warm, still holy. And as the silence returns, you can't help but wonder, why didn't he fight? Why didn't he flee? Why did he kneel instead of run? You may not know the full answer, but this much is clear. The greatest strength that night was shown not by those with swords, but by the one who chose to lay his life down. And so the night deepens. Jesus, bound and silent, is taken to the high priest's courtyard. You follow, unseen heart pounding. The garden is behind you now, but its shadow remains. What began in the quiet will soon echo through history. And you were there to see the beginning. The path is narrow, winding through sleeping alleys of stone and dust. Jerusalem is hushed, the stars overhead, dimmed by flickering torchlight. You move with the crowd at a distance, blending into shadows, unsure why your feet keep following. But something inside you won't let you turn away. The guards lead Jesus to the house of Caiaphas the high priest. It's large, imposing, far too elaborate for this hour of the night, and yet torches burn along its outer walls. They were expecting him. You slip through a side passage and find a spot near the courtyard's edge. It's colder here. The stone radiates a kind of chill that makes you pull your cloak tighter. A fire crackles in the center, surrounded by servants and guards, faces tense, eyes sharp. They're here to watch him fall. Jesus stands just beyond the firelight, surrounded, questioned. His hands are still bound, his face still calm. Caiaphas paces. He wants a confession. He wants an excuse. But Jesus gives him almost nothing. "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?" The high priest's voice cuts through the silence, and then a pause. Finally, Jesus speaks, I am. Just 2 words. And yet they split the night like thunder. Historians still debate whether this moment qualifies as blasphemy under Jewish law. Did Jesus claim divinity clearly enough to deserve death? Was the council even allowed to meet this late at night? So many legal inconsistencies swirl around this scene. But here's what you do know. Caiaphas tears his robe, and the room erupts. He has spoken blasphemy, someone cries. Death, another shouts. No jury, no evidence, just rage. And in the background, you see Peter. He's near the fire, close enough to see, but not to help. A servant girl squints at him. Weren't you with him? She asks. Peter freezes. You've never seen him look so unsure. He opens his mouth and lies. I don't know the man. The words sting like ash in your throat. Another voice chimes in, you're one of them. I've seen you. I swear I don't know him. And again, a third time. More insistent now. You even talk like a Galilean. Peter swears loudly, a fisherman's oath, harsh and final. The rooster crows, sharp, lonely, unforgiving. Peter turns. Across the courtyard, Jesus looks up. Their eyes meet, and Peter crumbles. You watch him stumble away, hands over his face, shoulders heaving. The bravest disciple, the rock now broken by a glance. That's the thing about love. It doesn't always need words. Sometimes just a look is enough to shatter you. Back in the council chamber, Jesus is silent again. His face bears fresh bruises, slaps from guards emboldened by the priest's verdict. They cover his eyes, strike him, and mock prophesy who hit you. And he endures it all. No lightning falls from the sky. No angels descend in protest. Just the sound of fists and laughter and the weight of a trial already decided. Some argue he should have defended himself. Why stay quiet? Why not explain? But maybe silence was his final sermon. A message not shouted but endured. You stay until the fire dies low and the crowd thins. Jesus is taken away, bound more tightly now. The trial is over, but the sentence has only begun. As you walk away, the first colors of dawn touch the edges of the sky. A rooster crows again far off. You wonder how many more hearts broke at that sound. And you realize this was never about justice. It was always about mercy, even in betrayal, even in silence, even now. The streets are stirring now. Vendors begin setting up their stalls, unaware that history has shifted while they slept. You move quietly among them, still cloaked in the weight of the night's events. But you're not the only one awake. Jesus is led through the gates again, this time not to a priest but to a politician, Pontius Pilate. The Roman governor's palace looms ahead, cold and official, with marble that glows softly in the morning light. Pilate isn't a cruel man by reputation, but he is tired. He didn't ask to be involved in a religious trial. He certainly didn't ask to judge a man whose only weapon seems to be peace. Still, the priests insist. This man stirs up the people, they say. He claims to be a king. And that word king catches Pilate's attention, because there's only one recognized king in Rome's eyes, and it's not this Nazarene. They bring Jesus inside. Pilate studies him. This man doesn't look dangerous. He looks exhausted, but not defeated. Never that. So are you the king of the Jews? Pilate asks. Jesus answers calmly, you say that I am. It's not a dodge, it's a mirror. He's offering Pilate a choice, see me for who I am, or for what they claim. Pilate turns to the crowd. I find no fault in him. But that's not enough. The religious leaders are relentless. So Pilate tries another tactic. He sends Jesus to Herod, the ruler of Galilee, who just happens to be in town. Let Herod deal with this mess. Herod, ever theatrical, is eager to meet Jesus. He's heard of the miracles, the crowds, the whispers. He wants a show, a sign, a trick. But Jesus remains silent, utterly. He does not speak one word to Herod. This silence unsettles Herod more than any sermon might have. Mocking, he has Jesus dressed in a flashy robe and sent back to Pilate. A joke, a punchline, but no verdict. Back at the palace, Pilate is frustrated. His wife pulls him aside. She's pale, disturbed. I had a dream about this man, she whispers. Have nothing to do with him. Even dreams now speak against this execution. Pilate steps out again. The crowd has grown. Voices are louder. angrier, he tries to offer compromise. There's a custom, he says, to release one prisoner during the Passover. Shall I release Jesus? But the crowd shouts for Barabbas, a known rebel, a man convicted of insurrection and murder, and yet they want him. Then, what shall I do with Jesus? Pilate asks, his voice tinged with disbelief. And they answer with a roar, crucify him. That word, heavy, final, no trial left, no justice to weigh. Pilate washes his hands in front of them, a symbolic gesture, an attempt to distance himself from guilt. But water doesn't cleanse the conscience. Historians still argue whether Pilate was weak or simply pragmatic. Could he have stopped it, or was the crowd too far gone? Regardless, he gives the order. Jesus is handed over, and the soldiers get to work. They strip him, laugh, twist thorns into a crown and press it into his scalp, a robe deep red draped across bruised shoulders. They bow mockingly, "Hail, King of the Jews." And he takes it. Every thorn, every insult. Not with stoicism, not with numbness, but with purpose. Because even here with spit on his cheek and blood in his hair, he is still who he says he is. Your stomach turns as they lead him away. He stumbles under the weight of the crossbeam rough wood scraping torn skin. You walk behind, heart aching. This isn't the kind of royalty you expected. No banners, no trumpet, just pain. And yet somehow you can't look away. The road out of the city is uneven, littered with loose stones and the echoes of ancient cries. You follow the procession, barely noticing how quickly the crowd has grown. People have come from every corner of Jerusalem. Some curious, some jeering, some weeping behind veils. Jesus walks ahead, but not alone. 2 others carry crosses too, criminals condemned to die beside him. And yet all eyes are drawn to him. He stumbles, hard. The weight of the beam is too much now. The soldiers shout shove, but he doesn't rise. That's when they grab a man from the crowd, Simon of Cyrene, a traveler from North Africa. He didn't come for this. He was likely just passing through, maybe bring his sons to celebrate Passover. But in an instant, Simon is pulled into the center of the story. They place the beam on his shoulders, and side by side, Simon and Jesus continue forward, one helping physically, the other carrying far more than wood. Historians note how rare it was to enlist help in such a procession. Roman protocol was brutal and unrelenting, but perhaps they feared he wouldn't make it at all. You glance at his face as he walks. Blood trickles down from the thorns. His eyes are swollen, but they're open, still watching, still seeing. Along the path, a group of women cries out. They're not his disciples, not family, just women. Mothers, daughters moved by what they see. Jesus pauses, turns to them, and even in this agony he speaks. Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. A strange thing to say maybe, but his meaning runs deep. He's thinking ahead, warning them of days to come, of sieges and suffering, of what will happen when peace is refused. You feel the breeze change. The scent in the air shifts drier, dustier. You've reached the place. Golgotha, the place of the skull. Its name alone sends chills. Some say the hill looked like a skull from a distance. Others believe it was the site of ancient execution's bones buried beneath. A few even whisper it was where Adam himself was laid to rest, the father of all men. And now the place where the Son of Man would redeem them. No one knows for sure. Historians still debate its true location, whether it's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre or a rocky rise outside the Damascus Gate. But here now, under the high sun, the spot is real enough. You can't look away as they lay him down. The hammer sounds are sharp, rhythmic, cruel. There's no screaming, only gasps, groans. Nails through wrists, not palms. The Romans knew how to prolong pain. They were methodical, efficient. And then the cross is raised, lifted, settled into its socket with a jolt that ripples through bone. You want to shut your eyes, to turn back, but something sacred holds you here. He hangs between 2 thieves, and still speaks. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Forgive now. It makes no sense, but then again, nothing about this day does. The soldiers gamble for his clothes, tossing dice like children playing a game. The sign above his head reads, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Mockery to some, truth to others. You shift your gaze to the crowd. Some people are crying, others are laughing. One man shouts, "He saved others, let him save himself." But he doesn't. Not because he can't, but because he won't. You hear one of the thieves beside him speak angry, bitter, but the other one, he looks over, blood on his lips, and says, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus answers, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Even now he offers hope. Even now he welcomes. You realize something then? This is not just execution, it's invitation. And you're a witness to it. Noon arrives, but the sun does not. The sky, once clear and blazing, dims unnaturally. You glance up. It's not clouds, it's something heavier. The air thickens. The light fades, not like dusk, but like something holy stepping away from the world. Darkness over everything. 3 full hours. Historians still argue whether this was an eclipse, a dust storm, or something supernatural. Records from outside scripture hint that people as far away as Egypt noted an unexplainable darkness that day, but none of them can agree on what it truly was. You stand at the foot of the cross, still, shivering slightly, though it's not the cold. Beside you, Mary, his mother, eyes red-faced, tight, holding her pain with a strength only mothers understand. John stands near her, the disciple he loved. He doesn't speak, just holds her hand. And Jesus from the cross looks down and whispers, "Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother." Even here he thinks of others, of connection, of family. Another moment passes, then another word. "I thirst." A soldier lifts a sponge soaked in sour wine to his lips. It's not kindness, it's routine, but he drinks it anyway. Your own throat is dry, from dust, from grief, from awe, and then something changes. Jesus cries out. A raw, anguished voice tears across the hill. My God, why have you forsaken me?" It rattles you, not because you don't understand, but because you do. The man who raised the dead, calmed the sea, and forgave sins, now feels abandoned, not just by people, but by the one he's trusted above all. It's a mystery that theologians still wrestle with. Did God truly turn away? Or was Jesus quoting Psalm 22, giving voice to prophecy, fulfilling scripture, showing the depths of his suffering? There is no simple answer, only silence, and then the final words. He draws in a last breath, not like one giving up, but like someone finishing something. It is finished. Not a cry of defeat, but a declaration. You sense it. The earth seems to shift beneath your feet. Then the ground trembles. A low rumble, stone cracking. People stumble, panic. An earthquake. And in the heart of the temple, far from this hill, the curtain, the massive veil separating the Holy of Holies, is torn in two, top to bottom. No hand touched it. No priest ripped it. But it split, like something greater had reached down and opened the way. That curtain wasn't just fabric. It was a wall between God and humanity, between holiness and sinners. And now, it's gone, torn, like his body, so we could walk through. The centurion near the cross stares wide-eyed. He's seen many executions, he's ordered many himself, but never like this. He falls to one knee. Surely this man was the Son of God. You don't know if it was belief or shock, but either way, the words hang in the air like incense. The sky stays dim. The crowd begins to disperse. Some leave quietly. Others beat their chests in grief. And there he hangs, still. You realize the darkness isn't just in the sky. It's inside you, inside everyone. And yet, there's a strange kind of peace too, like something terrible and wonderful has just happened. Something that will never be undone. You stay until the soldiers come. They check the bodies, break the legs of the 2 thieves to hasten death. But when they reach Jesus, they pause. He's already gone. One of them, unsure, lifts a spear and thrusts it into his side. Blood and water pour out. Clean, separate, strange. Doctors say it could be a sign his heart literally ruptured. A fringe theory, but not impossible. You take one last look. His face is calm now, not twisted in pain, but at rest. Like someone who has finished their work, and is finally sleeping. Evening falls gently, like a blanket laid over a weary city. You walk slowly, quietly, feet dragging through the gravel. The crowd has mostly vanished now, leaving behind only whispers and footprints in the dust. But the cross still stands, and his body still hangs there. Crucified criminals were often left overnight, a grim warning to others, but something different happens today. Two men step forward, unusual men, respected, religious, wealthy. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, both members of the Sanhedrin, both once silent in their loyalty to Jesus, but tonight they speak with actions. Joseph goes to Pilate and asks for the body, an unusual request. Pilate is surprised Jesus is already dead. He confirms it, then grants permission. Joseph has prepared a tomb, new, unused, carved into stone, a resting place for a king, not a criminal. Nicodemus brings spices, 75 pounds of myrrh and aloes, a fortune really, enough for a royal burial. Together they gently lower Jesus from the cross. You watch them work in solemn silence, not hurried, not afraid, just present. They wrap the body in fine linen, soak it in the spices. They do not rush the ritual. They honor the moment. Historians still marvel at this moment that two secret followers would risk their positions, their reputations, to honor a man just condemned by their peers. But perhaps when you watch someone die with such grace, hiding becomes impossible. They carry the body to the garden, not far, close enough to Golgotha that the women still follow, still watch. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, Salome. They say nothing, just weep. The tomb is quiet. A large stone waits nearby, heavy, final. They lay him down, and for a moment the earth seems to sigh. You walk slowly backward, not wanting to leave. The tomb is closed with effort, sealed tight. The stone thuds into place. It echoes in your chest like a door closing on hope. Roman guards will arrive soon. The priests remember Jesus' words about rising again on the third day, and they fear rumors. So they ask Pilate for protection. A guard is posted. The stone is marked with a seal. No one is getting in or out. But as you stand in the gathering dusk, you feel something strange. Stillness. Not defeat, not despair. Stillness. Like a held breath. Like the moment before dawn. Scholars debate what happened next. Did Jesus truly descend into the realm of the dead, as some creeds suggest? Was there a cosmic battle, a spiritual triumph hidden from human eyes? No one can say for sure. The Bible offers few details, but it does tell us this: the story wasn't over. You return home, your heart heavy but expectant. Because the tomb may be sealed, but something tells you this is not the end. The day that follows is the quietest Jerusalem has ever known. The city is caught in a strange tension between festival and funeral, between ritual and regret. The Sabbath dawns, and with it comes silence. Not because people have nothing to say, but because some things are too heavy to speak aloud. You wake early, staring at the ceiling, unsure why your body feels sore. Maybe it's the emotional weight of what you witnessed. Maybe it's something deeper. You step outside. The streets are still. Shops are shuttered. The temple is busy, but not bustling. The usual Passover songs seem hollow today. And in the distance, that garden, the tomb, sealed. You think of the women, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Salome. They're resting now as required by law, but their minds must be racing, planning, waiting. They have ointments prepared, spices. They want to anoint his body properly, even if it means returning to that grave. But for now they wait. You hear whispers. Some say the temple curtain really tore, that the inner sanctuary was exposed. Others say they saw the earth move, the sky darken at noon. Historians still puzzle over these accounts. Are they metaphors, exaggerations, or signs? Whatever they are, no one can deny that something changed yesterday. And the people feel it. You walk past the high priest's house. It's quiet, windows closed, a guard stationed outside. Caiaphas is no doubt uneasy. After all, the man he condemned didn't resist. You think of Nicodemus, of Joseph of Arimathea, of Peter somewhere out there alone, wrecked with shame. And what of Judas? Some say he returned the silver, that he threw it into the temple, that he couldn't live with what he'd done. You pause under a fig tree, its branches sway in the wind. Maybe this is how the world ends, not with fire, but with silence. The weight of waiting settles in your chest. Not much is said that day. The hours stretch. And yet, beneath the surface, you can almost hear something stir. A distant hope, a tremor in the soul, like a seed buried in soil about to break. The first light of dawn paints the sky in soft streaks of rose and gold. You step outside and breathe in air that feels different. It's still cool, still hushed, but there's an energy you can't explain. A quiet thrum under your feet, like the whole world is standing on tiptoe waiting for something impossible. And then footsteps, fast, desperate. You see them before you hear them. Mary Magdalene, breathless, her eyes wide with confusion and wonder. Behind her, the other women follow, arms still cradling jars of spices. They run, not with mourning, but with hope. He's not there, Mary gasps. Her voice trembles. We went to anoint the body. The stone. It was rolled away. You stare at her, unsure if she's making sense. The tomb was open, she continues, and the body was gone. One of the women nods quickly, adding, there was a man, or an angel. He said, why do you seek the living among the dead? Your heart skips. Once, twice. Can this be? Peter and John rush past you, robes flapping behind them like sails in a storm. They run toward the tomb, not caring who sees. You follow, not far behind. The garden feels different this morning, not like a place of death, but like a womb, something about to be born. You reach the tomb. The stone is rolled aside, the seal broken, the guards gone. Peter bends inside first, then John, and you wait. Then Peter emerges, his face pale. He doesn't speak. John steps out behind him, says only the linens were there, but not the body. They leave quietly, confusion written all over them. But you stay. You turn and see her, Mary Magdalene again. She's outside the tomb now, sobbing. Then she looks up and gasps. You follow her gaze. A man stands there. You didn't hear him approach. She mistakes him for a gardener at first. Sir, if you've taken him, tell me where you've laid him. Then he says her name, Mary, and her whole body stills. Rabboni, she whispers. It means teacher. The way she says it, you know. It's him. Alive. Whole. Glorious. Not a ghost, not a vision. Jesus. She falls at his feet, but he gently says, do not cling to me. I have not yet ascended to my Father. But go tell my brothers, tell them I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. She runs, again, but this time not to mourn, to tell the world. You walk slowly through the garden, stunned. He was dead. You saw it. You heard the last breath, the final words. And yet now he lives. It's the moment that changed everything. And it didn't begin in a palace, not with trumpets, not with armies, but with a quiet name, spoken to a weeping woman. The world will never be the same. The news spreads like wildfire. Whispers turn into proclamations. Proclamations turn into declarations. He is risen. He is risen. You hear it in markets, whispered in corners, sung softly in alleys. Not everyone believes, of course, but the ones who do, they can't stay silent. You return to the place where the disciples are hiding. The room is locked. Fear still lingers in the bones of those who followed him. Roman authorities have not disappeared. The crucifixion was public, visible, final, or so it seemed. Inside you find them, Peter still weighed by shame, John always watching, the others silent until the door creaks open. And there she is, Mary Magdalene, her hair tangled from running, her eyes ablaze. I've seen the Lord, she says. They want to believe her. You can feel it. But doubt creeps like vines around the heart. They need more than words. Then, that evening, while shadows stretch across the floor, Jesus appears. He doesn't knock. He doesn't announce himself. He simply stands among them. Peace be with you, he says. Not judgment, not questions. Peace. They freeze. And then, one by one, recognition settles into their eyes. He shows them his hands, his side. They are not illusions. This is not some spirit hovering in a dream. This is Jesus, alive, tangible, glorified. And he says it again, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you. You watch Peter's hands tremble. The same hands that once reached for a sword, now reach for mercy. Jesus breathes on them. A soft breath, a beginning. Receive the Holy Spirit, he says. And just like that, fear starts to loosen its grip. But one of them wasn't there, Thomas. And when he hears the others, he shakes his head. Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe. So Jesus waits. Not with frustration, not with scorn, but with grace. 8 days later, they're gathered again. And Jesus appears once more. Peace be with you, he says. Then he turns to Thomas. Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Thomas does not reach. He falls. My Lord and my God, he whispers. It's not a scientific conclusion, it's a surrender, a moment that echoes through the ages. And Jesus replies, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. You stand quietly in the corner, heartful. He spoke of you. You who were not there to touch the wounds. You who read and wonder. You who listen now in the dark, waiting for sleep. He spoke of you, and he called you blessed. The story continues, but in that room with nail-scarred hands and the scent of oil still clinging to your memory, you begin to believe. And nothing will ever be the same. The days after the resurrection unfold slowly like petals opening in spring. Jesus does not ascend immediately. He lingers for 40 days. Not every hour, not always expected, but he appears again and again, always with purpose, always with peace. You walk the hills around Jerusalem, hoping, wondering. Each morning the sun rises softer. Each evening the stars shine clearer. The world feels washed in something new, not certainty, but hope. One morning the disciples return from Galilee. They say he met them on the shore, by the Sea of Tiberias. You know that place. Gentle waves, rocky shores, fishermen mending nets. They had returned to fishing, back to what they knew, back to what was safe. Maybe they thought the story was over. But just as the dawn broke, someone called to them from the shore. Friends, have you caught any fish? They hadn't. All night empty nets. Then the voice again, cast the net on the right side. They did, and suddenly fish. So many the nets groaned with weight. John looked up. It is the Lord, he said. And Peter, he didn't wait. He jumped from the boat, splashing through shallow water, heart pounding to reach him. Jesus stood on the shore. Not glowing, not distant, but human. He had a fire going, fish roasting, bread warmed. Come and eat, he said. It's such a simple moment, and yet profound. The risen Lord cooks breakfast. He doesn't preach. He doesn't perform a miracle. He serves. There's something holy in that, not just in the feeding, but in the sharing. You imagine them sitting there, still damp from the sea, still dazed, chewing in silence. What do you say to someone who conquered death? And then after breakfast, he pulls Peter aside. They walk together slowly. Jesus asks, do you love me more than these? Peter hesitates. Yes, Lord. You know that I love you. Feed my lambs, Jesus says. Again he asks, and again. 3 times, one for each denial. Not to shame Peter, but to restore him. Scholars still reflect on this exchange. Was Jesus softening Peter's heart, rebuilding his calling? Likely both. Jesus ends with a quiet command, follow me. And Peter does. You reflect on it all. How Jesus chose the shoreline, not a synagogue. How he chose breakfast, not brilliance. How he chose broken men and made them whole. And it stirs something deep within you. You realize resurrection wasn't just for Jesus. It's for anyone who thought their failure was final. For anyone who thinks their story is over. It's for you, right now. The days continue, and Jesus appears again, this time on a mountain in Galilee. You climb the path slowly, heart thrumming with anticipation. Others walk with you, men and women who still carry disbelief in their bones, but something stronger in their hearts. When you reach the top, the air is different, sharper, still. And there he is. Not surrounded by angels, not glowing with fire. Just standing, alive. You pause, breath caught in your chest. Some fall to their knees, others hesitate. Even now, some doubt. It comforts you in a strange way. That doubt and worship can live side by side. Jesus doesn't push them away. He stands among them, arms open. And then he speaks. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. The wind picks up around you as if the very earth is listening. And behold, he says, I am with you always to the very end of the age. Not just here, not just now, always. You look around, these are not scholars, not warriors, not kings. They're fishermen, tax collectors, women with stories and scars. And yet, he trusts them with the future. Historians marvel at this moment. No empires were formed, no armies deployed, just a handful of flawed people, carrying the greatest truth the world has ever known. You stay on the mountain long after he's gone. The sun moves across the sky, birds sing, people whisper, and your heart burns. Because you realize you've been entrusted too, not to be perfect, but to be faithful, to walk the dusty road with love, to tell what you've seen, to live what you believe. You descend the mountain slowly, the words still echoing in your ears. I am with you always. You whisper it to yourself. Through joy, through grief, through silence and song, always. And you believe it. The city returns to its rhythms. Streets buzz again. Markets reopen. Children laugh unaware of the seismic shift that just occurred in the soil beneath their sandals. But for the followers of Jesus, everything has changed. You find yourself in the upper room again, not because it's the safest place, but because it's sacred now. The same room where he washed feet, where he broke bread, where he promised the Spirit. You sit near the window watching the breeze play with the linen curtain. Peter is there. So is John. And Mary, his mother. Her face is peaceful yet distant, like someone living with both sorrow and glory wrapped in a single heartbeat. They're waiting, because Jesus told them to. He had appeared again not long ago, and not just to the 11, to more than 500 some say, in different places, different ways. But always him, always unmistakable. Then, one morning outside the city on the Mount of Olives, he gathered them. You were there, standing among the crowd. The sky was clear, the olive trees whispering above. Jesus smiled, not the weary smile of Gethsemane, but something lighter, whole. He lifted his hands. You remember thinking how strange they looked, still scarred but full of light. And then he said, You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. His voice didn't tremble, and as he finished speaking, he began to rise, not metaphorically, not poetically, physically, lifted, upward, slowly, peacefully. The disciples watched with mouths open and eyes wide. You watched too as the figure of Jesus disappeared into the clouds. No thunder, no lightning, just silence and awe. A few seconds later, 2 men in white appeared beside you. Men of Galilee, they said, why do you stand looking into the sky? This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go. Their words hang in the air like the final line of a lullaby. You walk back to Jerusalem, the dust warm under your feet. Some around you weep, others sing. But you just breathe. Because everything inside you whispers the same truth, he is coming again. You sit now in the quiet of the upper room and you wait. Not with fear, not with grief, but with a sense of something beginning. You don't know what the Spirit will be. You don't know how your life will change. But you know he will come, and when he does, you'll be ready. The waiting doesn't last forever. 10 days pass. 10 days of prayers whispered through sleepless nights, of old scrolls reread by candlelight, of stories shared of boats and storms of meals and miracles of wounds and wonder. And then one morning something happens. You're in the room, same walls, same people, but the air changes. It hums. A sound rises faint at first, like wind stirring leaves far away, then louder, closer, until it fills the entire space. It's not just sound, it's presence. A rushing wind with no window open, a hush that somehow roars, and then flames, little flickers of fire, resting gently on every head. You touch your skin expecting pain, but it doesn't burn. It glows. You look at Peter. He looks at John. Everyone sees the same thing. Something ancient and divine has descended, and it lives now in you. Your heart pounds with joy, not fear. Your lungs swell with something you've never breathed before, a spirit, the Spirit. And suddenly you speak, but not in your own tongue. Languages pour from your lips. You never learned Syrian, Phrygian, Egyptian, Latin. You hear Parthian, you hear Greek, and yet you understand it all. The door bursts open. You and the others stumble into the streets, laughing, crying, praising. It's early just after dawn, but people gather. Thousands from every nation, every trade, every tongue. They hear you. They hear God. Some accuse you of drunkenness, but bold Peter the same who once denied steps forward and raises his voice. These men are not drunk as you suppose. It's only the 3rd hour of the day. He speaks of prophecy, of Joel, of dreams and visions, of Spirit poured out on sons and daughters. And then he tells the story of Jesus, his life, his death, his resurrection. He speaks not with eloquence, but with truth, and something stirs in the crowd. They don't argue. They don't mock. They ask one question: what shall we do? Peter doesn't hesitate. Repent. Be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, and you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. That day, 3,000 hearts crack open like clay jars. 3,000 souls step into the light. 3,000 stories are rewritten. You watch them wade into water, some trembling, some weeping, all changed. You help lift them out, dripping, shining, new. And you realize the garden prayer, the cross, the tomb, the breakfast on the shore. It was all leading here, to this. Not just salvation, but mission. The Spirit has come. And now the world will never be the same. Life doesn't return to normal. It can't. Because once you've seen the risen Christ, once you've felt the Spirit fill the room like wind and fire, normal is no longer enough. You live differently now. Not because you were told to, but because something inside you has been remade. You gather daily with others in homes on rooftops beneath fig trees. You break bread together. You share stories. You sing songs that weren't written down yet, but they live in your bones like lullabies from heaven. You devote yourself to the apostles' teaching, not lectures, stories, witness. Peter speaks of walking on water. John tells of leaning on Jesus' chest the night he was betrayed. Matthew, once a tax collector, now reads the prophets like love letters fulfilled. You listen, and listen again. But it's not all peaceful. Not everyone rejoices at this new way. You see tension rising in the streets. Temple leaders whisper about arrests. Some mock you, call you madmen chasing dead dreams. But how can you be silent? You saw him. You touched his scars. You felt the tremble in the earth as he gave up his final breath. You remember the night you prayed with others in Solomon's colonnade, how the Spirit moved again. How one man was healed with nothing but a word and a hand lifted in faith. You watched him leap shouting, praising, and people gathered again. But this time the authorities came too. Peter and John were arrested, dragged before the Sanhedrin, the same court that condemned Jesus. You feared the worst, but Peter stood tall, unshaken. If we are being called to account today for an act of kindness shown to a man who was lame, then know this: it is by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom you crucified, but whom God raised from the dead, that this man stands before you healed. Their boldness astonished even the priests. These were fishermen, untrained, yet fearless. They were ordered to be silent, to stop speaking of Jesus. But Peter only said, "We cannot help speaking about what we have seen and heard." You remember those words even now, because they echo in you. You've seen, you've heard, you cannot help it either. And so you keep gathering, keep praying, keep loving. You share what you have: food, clothes, coins. No one among you goes hungry. You feel it a kingdom not made of brick or scrolls, but of people, of hearts awakened. Historians still wonder how the early church grew so rapidly. Some say it was the message, others the miracles. But, it was love. Undeniable, uncontainable, unshakable. And it started with one man kneeling in a garden, whispering, "Not my will, but yours." The seasons begin to shift. The sun now rises earlier. The markets swell with fruit and grain. And still your small community gathers each day, growing in number and in courage. But with the growth comes pressure. You notice the stares, the whispered warnings, the tension in the temple courts. And soon a name begins to circulate: Stephen. He's young, passionate, full of grace, a man who glows with something divine. He serves tables, yes, but when he speaks, the words burn like fire and heal like balm. One afternoon you watch him teach. His voice is calm, but his truth is sharp. He speaks of Moses, of the prophets, of how the Holy Spirit has always pursued Israel, of how stiff-necked hearts miss the very one they waited for. The crowd tightens, their faces darken, and then stones. Not words, stones. They drag him outside the city. Stephen doesn't run, doesn't plead. He looks up. Look, he says, "I see heaven open, and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." His last words: "Lord, do not hold this sin against them." Then silence. The first martyr, the first seed spilled on soil. You can barely speak as you walk home. It's the same road Jesus walked, the same pattern. Forgiveness, surrender, glory. After Stephen's death, fear returns, but it doesn't break you. It scatters you. Like dandelion seeds on the wind, believers begin leaving Jerusalem not to escape, but to carry the truth elsewhere. Samaria, Joppa, Damascus. The story spreads, and one name keeps chasing it: Saul. You've heard of him, a man of iron, trained under the best, zealous, unyielding. He drags believers from homes, puts chains on wrists still warm from prayer. He believes he's doing God's will. And one day, he vanishes. Word comes weeks later. He was on the road to Damascus, letters of arrest in his hands, and then light. Blinding, he fell. Heard a voice, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And everything changed. Now they say he preaches. Preaches, the same man who hunted us. It's hard to believe. Some don't. Even the apostles hesitate. But not Barnabas. He vouches for Saul, stands beside him. You meet Saul one evening, his face still marked with awe, like someone who fell too close to fire but lived. He speaks softly, humbly. I was blind, he says, but now I see. You believe him, because you know what it's like to be forgiven more than you deserve. And with Saul, the message stretches even farther. To Gentiles, to Greeks, to Romans, to strangers once thought too far. The garden prayer, not my will but yours, is reaching its echo. Across cities, across hearts, through voices like yours. Years pass, and yet you still wake with the memory of that night in the garden, of dew-covered leaves, of whispered surrender, of a prayer so powerful it reshaped eternity. But now you live among churches, not buildings people, communities springing up like wildflowers in unexpected places. Corinth, Philippi, Ephesus, each one different, each one messy, but each one bearing fruit. You visit them sometimes, share stories, break bread, encourage. And everywhere you go, they speak of him, not just as a memory, not just as a name, but as a living presence. They speak of the cross, yes, but also the crown, of death and life, of a tomb and a throne. You smile at their questions. What was his voice like? Did his eyes really shine when he laughed? Was he taller than Peter? You tell them what you can, but you always return to the garden, to that moment, when everything shifted in silence. Still, not everyone welcomes the message. Rome watches the movement with wary eyes. Too many gatherings, too many baptisms, too many people choosing grace over empire. And then the arrests begin, first in whispers, then openly. Some churches go underground. They carve fish symbols in dirt roads, sing in basements, pray in caves. But they don't stop. You hear stories of Paul, yes, Saul, now traveling constantly, writing letters from prisons, preaching in synagogues, getting stoned, getting up again. They say he still walks with a limp, but never with regret. You think of Peter too, older now, still bold, still broken yet gloriously whole. He writes to the scattered ones, though you do not see him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. You read that line over and over, because it describes you, and all who have joined since, the ones who didn't see, but still believe. You sit by a fire one night with a new believer, young curious. He asks, why would he do it? Why would Jesus go through all that? You look up, the stars are bright, the wind gentle, and you answer slowly, because he loved us more than we feared him, because mercy was stronger than death, and because in that garden, he said yes. The young man is quiet, then nods. And you know the story continues, one heart at a time. Rome tightens its grip. You feel it in the streets, in the way soldiers watch, in the questions whispered at market stalls. The empire is nervous. Too many gatherings, too many miracles, too many people naming Jesus as Lord instead of Caesar. And so the pressure builds. You hear that Peter has been taken, again. But this time, thus it's different. He's not escaping. He's not expecting to walk free. They say he was led outside the city gates, tied to a wooden beam, hands outstretched. And when they prepared to crucify him, he made one request. Not upright, he said. Not like my Lord. Turn me upside down. They granted it. Mockery, perhaps. But to him, it was reverence. Peter, the one who sank in the sea, the one who denied by the fire. Now he goes to his death with peace. It shakes you more than you thought it would. And then Paul. They say he wrote letters until the very end, even from the cold of a Roman cell. Scrolls filled with grace, correction, longing. He doesn't speak of revenge. He speaks of joy, of pressing on, of finishing the race. And when the sword finally falls, it doesn't end his story. It only completes it. You sit by a quiet stream, a scroll in your lap, one of his letters, perhaps the one to Timothy. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. You read it aloud to a younger believer beside you. She wipes tears from her eyes, not out of fear, but out of awe. She never met Peter, never heard Paul preach, but their words live in her, and in you. You hear rumors even now of new churches springing up, in Lydia's home, in the hills of Cappadocia, on distant islands. The gospel is moving, like breath, like wind. You think back to Gethsemane, to the soil pressed by trembling hands, to a prayer whispered through clenched teeth, to a man who said yes, not with ease, but with love. And now you see the fruit. Every life changed, every soul baptized, every martyr remembered is part of that garden echo. Historians will struggle to explain it. They'll call it a movement, a philosophy, a shift in religious thinking. But you know better. It was a surrender. One heart, one night, one yes. And the world has never recovered. Time flows like a gentle river, now steady, reflective, slower. You've grown older. Your hands, once quick to write, now tremble slightly when you hold the scrolls. Your hair is thinner, your steps less certain, but your mind, sharp as ever, and your heart still burning. You live quietly now in a coastal village, not famous, not sought after, but somehow people find you. They come for stories, for memories, for the way you say his name like it's both treasure and breath. One afternoon, a boy arrives, no more than 10, curious, wide-eyed. He asks a question so simple it stops your heart. What was he like when he laughed? You close your eyes, and suddenly you're back. You see him again beside a campfire, fish crackling, stars above. He's telling a story, something about sheep and a shepherd who never gives up. And then he laughs. Not just a polite chuckle, but deep, full, bright. Like the first light of morning. It bubbles out of him, surprising even himself. His head tilts back. And you remember thinking, this is what joy looks like. You tell the boy that story, and his eyes fill with wonder. Not fear, not distance, but closeness. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? God, close. That's what made Jesus different. He wasn't far off. He wasn't thundering from clouds. He sat beside you, held your hand, knew your name. And now, years later, as more and more people write down his words, translate, his story, build places to gather in his name, you remember the garden again. Not just the agony, but the intimacy. The way he looked up to heaven and said, Abba, Papa. Not ruler, not judge. Father. And you realize something? The prayer in Gethsemane wasn't just surrender. It was invitation to trust, to lean in, to be held. That's the story you tell now, not just of the cross, but of the closeness, of a God who knelt. You spend the evening by the shore. The waves lap softly. The sky glows. And you pray not with words, but with silence, because you know he's near. Still. The night comes gently, like a soft hand brushing your shoulder. You sit outside your small home, wrapped in a woven cloak, watching the stars blink into the sky one by one. They're the same stars Abraham once counted long before the world knew the name Jesus. And now that name is on every tongue, from Jerusalem to Rome, from Antioch to Alexandria. You smile as a breeze moves through the trees. You remember another night, one darker, one quieter, a garden, a prayer, and the sound of knees pressing into soil. It always returns to that. The moment when the path turned, when glory didn't look like power, but surrender. You still get letters now and then, stories of believers in far places, a widow in Cyprus who opened her home to strangers, a carpenter in Gaul who baptized his master, a child in Asia Minor who sings hymns louder than the priests. You don't know their faces, but you know their hearts, because you've seen what this love does. You've seen what happens when a man gives everything in a garden and doesn't take it back. That love multiplies. It breaks bread in 1,000 homes. It speaks dozens of languages. It survives emperors. It melts chains. It sings underground. It whispers over the beds of the sick. It stands in courts and catacombs. It weeps and waits and rejoices. And still it all began with a whisper. Not my will, but yours. You close your eyes. The boy you spoke with earlier is still playing by the stream. His laughter is high and free. You hear him call your name. But you stay seated, breathing deeply, feeling every heartbeat like a drum echoing eternity. The world is still broken in places, still aching, still waiting. But it is also full of gardens, full of prayers, full of people choosing surrender over control, love over fear, faith over sight. You rise slowly and step inside. There is parchment on the table, ink nearby. You write one last note before bed. Jesus prayed and the world changed, not with armies, but with love, not with might, but with mercy. You blow out the lamp, and the night holds you. Sleep comes gently, but morning always returns. You rise with the sun peeking through the shutters. The house is quiet, but your mind is already filled with names, faces, moments. You think of the Samaritan woman, her empty jar, her overflowing joy. The Roman centurion faith strong enough to stop Jesus in his tracks. Zacchaeus climbing trees to see the Savior climbing down to give everything away. These weren't priests or kings. They weren't scholars or saints, just people. People who encountered Jesus and walked away new. That's what strikes you now more than ever. How gentle his power was, how undemanding his majesty. He could calm seas, yes, but he could also touch a child's shoulder and smile. He could raise Lazarus with a shout, but he also wept with his sisters first. You remember it all, not as stories, as memories. And you find yourself whispering their names like prayers. You walk slowly into the village. Children wave. A baker hands you a piece of warm bread. A young couple greets you in Hebrew, then in Greek. Languages once foreign, now part of your daily life. Because the message has spread. Everywhere. There's a small church in your village now. It meets in a courtyard under a fig tree. No columns, no gold, just people. They read from scrolls, they share meals, they recite prayers they've memorized. But what moves you most is the silence between the lines. The quiet space where hearts listen, where his presence is felt not in thunder but in stillness. You think of Elijah, how God wasn't in the fire or the wind or the earthquake, but in the whisper, and that whisper still speaks. One child asks during the reading, "Why did Jesus have to suffer?" The elder pauses, and all eyes turn to you. You don't answer with theology, you answer with a memory. In the garden, you say he had the power to leave, but he stayed. Because love doesn't run. The child nods, not fully understanding, but enough. And maybe that's what faith is. Not having every answer, just knowing who stayed. The sky darkens with a coming storm. Clouds press low. The sea murmurs with unrest. You pull your cloak tighter as you step outside the air thick with the scent of rain and salt. But the storm doesn't frighten you. You've seen worse, and you've seen the one who walks upon the waves. You remember that night clearly, how the winds howled, how the boat trembled, and how he stood there unmoved. Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. You whisper the words now as if they were a lullaby to the trembling earth. A young woman from the village joins you under the awning. She's troubled. You can see it in her eyes. She lost someone recently, her brother barely a man. She asks, why does he allow sorrow if he has conquered death? You take her hand gently, and you speak not from a scroll, but from the hill called Golgotha. You tell her how he wept before raising Lazarus, how he didn't rush past pain, but entered it, felt it, let it shape the silence between miracles. Even in resurrection, you say there is room for tears. The storm begins to fall in earnest. Rain patters the clay roof tiles. You both sit in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable, just present. Then you say something that has lingered in your heart for decades. The miracle wasn't just that he rose, it's that he returned to us. To Thomas doubting, to Peter ashamed, to Mary weeping, and to you again and again. The storm passes, and with it the tension in the young woman's face. She smiles softly and you know healing has begun. That's how it happens now. Not with thrones or thunder, but with one conversation at a time. One heart remembering the garden. The prayer that started it all. The prayer that still echoes. You return home that evening and light a small lamp. It flickers gently, casting gold across the scrolls on your shelf. You trace the spine of one. It holds the gospel you've read so many times. But tonight you open to Gethsemane again. You read slowly. And you let the words settle deep, because the power of the cross began there, not in might, but in mercy. And you, an old disciple with soft hands and a quiet life, have learned the deepest truth of all, that every soul who kneels in surrender joins him in that garden, and that's where eternity begins. The next morning, a visitor arrives unexpected, dusty, and eager. He's from far away. An island, he says. Patmos. You feel the name stir something within you, a place of exile, a place of vision. He carries a scroll, wrapped carefully, tied with a blue cord. It's from John, he says. Your breath stills. John, the beloved disciple, the one who leaned on Jesus' chest, the one entrusted with Mary, the one who saw more. You sit quietly, hands trembling slightly as you untie the cord. The parchment is filled with strange language visions, beast battles, golden streets. But woven through the fire and thunder is hope. You read, He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. And your heart swells. Because you've waited, you've grieved, you've buried friends, mentors, even children. And here's a promise, etched in ink and eternity. The visitor stays for supper. You share warm bread, figs, and honey. He asks questions, eager and wide-eyed. What was it like, he says, to hear him pray? You close your eyes. And again the olive branches sway. The moonlight glistens on his brow. You hear the quiet groan of surrender, the stillness of angels watching, the hush before history turns. It was not loud, you say, not theatrical, but it broke something open in the world, and in me. You pause, then add, he didn't run from sorrow, he walked straight into it. For us. The visitor listens with reverence. He doesn't interrupt. Later, you walk him to the edge of the village. The stars return so familiar now, like an old hymn in the sky. Before he leaves, he turns and asks, what should I tell the others? You don't hesitate. Tell them he stayed. When he could have run, he stayed. And that changes everything. He nods, tears in his eyes. You watch him vanish down the road and whisper a prayer into the night. Thank you for Gethsemane, for the cross, for the empty tomb, for today. You head back home, scroll still in hand, light still in your chest. Because even after all this time, the story is still alive. Your steps grow slower, but your days grow richer. You spend most mornings by the water, now watching waves crest and fold like prayers return to heaven. Children run past with laughter that feels like a psalm. Fishermen haul nets, not knowing they cast lines near the same sea where Jesus once said, "Follow me." And you smile because that call never stopped echoing. It's in every sunrise, every stranger who knocks, every moment someone chooses grace over revenge, every time a weary soul prays, "Not my will, but yours." One afternoon, a group of travelers arrives. They've heard of you. Not your name really, just that you were there, that you remember. You welcome them without hesitation. You don't speak from a platform. You don't hold a title. You just open your door and your heart. They ask about miracles, about the water into wine, about the feeding of thousands, about demons cast out. You nod gently. Yes, those were real. Yes, they were glorious. But the greatest miracle, you pause, let the wind carry the answer. The garden, you say, that moment he chose us, that moment he didn't leave. They look puzzled. You continue, it's not flashy. No fire from the sky. Just a man, alone, choosing to be crushed so we could be free. They don't speak for a long while. Then one of them, a woman with kind eyes, says, "My brother, he's struggling. He thinks he's too far gone, that he's broken beyond repair." You take her hands in yours. They're rough, calloused, faithful. No one, you say softly, is farther than Gethsemane. He knelt into our darkness and didn't back away. Tell your brother, he's already been carried. Tears fill her eyes, not sadness, recognition. The group leaves before sundown. They thank you, embrace you, promise to return. You remain at the gate, watching their forms grow smaller on the road. And as the stars rise, you whisper again, "Not my will." A phrase etched into the soil of history, still blooming, because it was never just a garden. It was the doorway. And we're all walking through it, one yes at a time. The moon is high and full when you wake from a dream. Not a frightening dream, a memory perhaps, or maybe something more. You were there again in the garden, but this time you weren't watching from a distance. You were kneeling beside him. The earth was damp, the air thick, and his hand rested on your shoulder. No words were spoken, just presence and peace. You sit up in bed, breathing deeply, the memory so vivid it lingers like incense in your clothes. The house is silent, but your soul is not. So you rise, you light a lamp, you walk outside. The stars overhead seem closer tonight, their light softer, like the heavens are leaning in. You walk through the olive grove just beyond the village, not ancient like Gethsemane, but enough. The trees creak gently in the breeze. You place your hand on the bark of one rough knotted full of life, and you kneel, not because of duty, not because someone told you to, but because your heart knows how to respond. You pray not with eloquence, but with honesty. Thank you for staying. Thank you for surrendering. Thank you for showing us how. You think of the people who still don't know, the ones across the sea, the ones behind stone walls, the ones who've never heard his name spoken with kindness. And your prayer changes. Use me, even now, even here. You return home as the first streaks of dawn touch the edge of the sky. And there on your table lies a scroll you hadn't noticed before. It's not new. In fact, it's worn, the edges frayed, the ink fading. You open it and read the words familiar yet forever alive. He was pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. You run your fingers along the line. Isaiah, words written centuries before Jesus, yet they knew him, saw him, pointed to him. You sit down pen in hand, and with slow, steady strokes you begin to write again. Not for fame, not for history, but for those who will come after. Because someone must tell them what happened in the garden, and what happened after. Someone must say it clearly. Love stayed. The village gathers one evening under a broad canopy of olive branches. It's a tradition now to meet once a month to share bread and memories to retell the story that holds them all together. Tonight they ask you to speak. You hesitate, not from fear but reverence. You've told the story so many times, and yet each telling feels like the first. Like you're still there beneath the trees watching him whisper to the sky. You rise slowly, the crowd hushes. Children lean forward, elders close their eyes. You begin not with his birth nor with his death, but with the prayer. Do you know you say that it was in the garden where the victory truly began? They nod slowly. Some already know, but they need to hear it again. You describe the olive press, the sweat like blood, the sleeping friends, the silence. You speak of the cup, the words that broke the world open, not my will, but yours be done. And you pause. Then you look at them, every face, every age, every story. You must understand, you say he didn't just pray for courage, he prayed for you. A hush falls. The night he surrendered, he knew your name. He saw your future. He carried your pain. One woman begins to cry. Another clasps her child's hand. You continue. He could have called down legions. He could have walked away. But love never leaves. They sit in silence, the kind of silence that heals. Then a boy speaks up. But why didn't he stop it? You kneel beside him eye to eye. Because he saw something worth saving. You. His lips tremble, and you gently place your hand on his shoulder. You're the joy he endured for? You rise and close with the same words you always do. Let the garden live in you. Let the prayer shape your steps. Let your yes echo his. They begin to sing softly an old hymn in a dozen accents. You sit again, tears in your eyes, heart full. And for a moment you see it. Not just the olive trees, not just the cross, but the kingdom. Here, now. A kingdom of quiet strength born in the stillest hour of the darkest night. And it's growing. In them. In you. Still. Another letter arrives this time from across the sea. It's from a small community in a port city you've never visited where Roman ships bring goods and stories alike. They write with trembling excitement, we have only fragments of his life. Tell us the part about the garden. Tell us what he prayed. You hold the parchment gently as though it were a hand reaching across the waters. And you write. You begin not with theology, but with the earth. You describe the texture of the soil in Gethsemane, how it clung to his knees, how it cradled the weight of his surrender, how the silence was heavy not with fear, but with eternity. You describe the olive trees, some old enough to remember the footsteps. You write of the wind, the cold, the way he whispered rather than shouted. And then you pause, pen lifted. You realize this isn't just history, it's invitation. So you write, The garden is not locked in the past. It lives again each time someone kneels and says, "Not my will, but yours." You finish the letter, seal it with care, and send it on its way. But the garden doesn't leave your mind. That night you dream. This time he's standing beside you, whole, glorious, smiling. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. You feel his presence like a warm tide pulling in. You look at his hand still scarred, still open, and he places one over yours. You wake with peace dripping through your soul like oil. No fear, no questions, just certainty. You step outside. The stars greet you like old friends. A breeze carries the scent of olives and salt. Somewhere a dog barks softly. A child laughs in her sleep. The world is still turning. But you are still in the garden, still listening, still watching, still saying yes. And tomorrow, when you speak again, when another stranger asks for the story, you'll begin, as always, with a single sentence. He went willingly. The days are quieter now. You spend your mornings tending to the small garden behind your home. Not olives, just herbs and vines, soft earth, and patient growth. Still, it reminds you, every kneel to pull a weed echoes that sacred night. Every seed planted feels like a tiny act of hope. One afternoon, a stranger arrives, an older man with a limp, a weathered face, and a satchel full of scrolls. He bows low. "They told me you might still be alive," he says. You smile. "Most days I am." He laughs, but his eyes are serious. He tells you of his home, a distant land filled with believers who gather in caves and whisper prayers through the walls. They've never seen Jerusalem, never walked the roads you walked, but they believe, and they want to understand. Some know about the cross, he says, and the resurrection, but the garden, they've never heard about that part. You nod slowly, because yes, it's always the garden that people forget. But without it, the cross would feel like fate and the resurrection like surprise. You sit him down, offer a meal, warm bread, olives, dried fruit. Then you begin again. You tell him of the hour when friends fell asleep, of the taste of dust in the night air, of the sound of his voice, low, strained, full of trembling strength. 3 times he prayed, you say, not to escape, but to surrender. The stranger listens intently, eyes never leaving yours. And that you add was where the victory began. He leans back, quiet, processing. Finally, he says, "We speak of kings and crowns, but rarely of sweat and silence." You nod. The silence was the crown, you reply. The kneeling was the throne. He stays the night. And before he leaves, you place a hand on his shoulder and offer one final truth. When you suffer, when you feel crushed like olives in the press, remember that the garden holds you too, that his yes carries your name. He weeps, then walks away down the dirt path a little straighter than when he came. And you return to the garden behind your home, digging your hands into the earth, blessing each small thing that grows. Because you know now more than ever, resurrection always begins in buried places. You wake before dawn, your old body more fragile than ever, but your spirit as steady as stone. The sea hums softly outside your window. A gull cries overhead, and in your chest, peace. You know the time is near. You feel it like a tide pulling back, a quiet release of breath before the final stillness. But you're not afraid. You rise slowly, dress with care, fold the same shawl you've worn for years, and take up your final scroll. The ink is ready, the lamp is low, but you write, because there are words that must remain. You begin. The night before the cross he prayed. He did not command legions, though he could have. He did not flee, though no chains held him. Instead, he knelt and offered himself. You pause, tears blurring the letters for a moment. Outside, the sky turns soft gray. You continue. He did not only die for us, he decided to. That choice was the beginning of every healing. You think of the faces you've seen across your life, Peter's grin by the fire, Mary's tears at the tomb, Thomas's trembling hands, Paul's ink-stained fingers, John's steady gaze from exile. They all held the same story, and now, so do you. You write one last line. The garden wasn't his weakness, it was his throne room, and in the quiet he chose to love us, all the way. You set the scroll down. The sun spills light across the floor. Birdsong begins. You lie back on the small cot by the window, pulling a blanket over your knees. You gaze at the olive tree just outside, not Gethsemane, but close enough in your heart. And then you whisper one final time, "Not my will, but yours." Your breath slows, and you feel him there, closer than ever, like the first breeze of a promised garden. And in that moment, you finally understand he never left. Not then, not now, not ever. Time drifts softly now. No clocks tick, no footsteps echo, only the hush of eternity unfolding. You are not here anymore, not exactly, not in the room, not on the bed, not even in the village. You are somewhere else, somewhere quiet, somewhere full of light. The garden returns, not in memory but in presence. It stretches before you fresh and alive, every olive branch glistening with dew, every petal stirred by a breeze you can't explain. And there he waits. Not the man broken on the cross, but the one risen from the tomb, the one who called your name long ago, the one who knelt in the dark so you could stand in the light. He smiles, and in his eyes, every story you've told lives again. Every soul you've touched shines like a candle. Every prayer, every yes, every whisper of faith gathered, held, treasured. You don't need to speak. You're home. He reaches out his hand, still scarred, still open, and you take it. Together you walk through the garden, but it feels different now. Not a place of sorrow, not a place of agony, but of promise fulfilled. The leaves shine brighter, the ground hums with warmth. You feel it in your soul. This is the restoration of all things. In the distance you see others arriving. Some you knew, some you only hoped to meet. They come not with shouts but with song, and in the center of it all, peace. Not silence, not numbness, but a peace that sings. And as the garden fades into soft gold, as the sky brightens with a light, not of this world, you know the final truth. The prayer that changed the world, it's still being answered. Even now, even here, even in those still waiting. Because love doesn't end in Gethsemane. It begins there. And it goes on. Forever. Now, dear listener, the story gently rests. You've walked the garden path. You've stood beside the cross. You've felt the earth tremble beneath a love so deep it surrendered before it conquered. You've listened to the quiet bravery of a single whispered prayer, not my will, but yours be done. And now, you are still. Let your body soften. Let your breath slow. The world is loud, but this space is not. This space was made for you, for your soul to settle, for your heart to remember. You are not forgotten. You are not far from grace. Even now, the one who knelt in the garden watches over you. Let the silence wrap around you like linen. Let the memory of olive trees sway in your mind. Whatever sorrow you carry, whatever fear lingers, it is known. It is held. It is already carried. So sleep now with peace, for the one who rose still reigns. The one who wept still watches. And the prayer that once changed the world still changes you. You are loved. You are safe. Now, close your eyes and let your dreams walk gently in the garden of God.